This cruise ship is built for adventure. From the fjords of Chile to the wild winds of Cape Horn.
The weather winds are the best winds.
Places so remote they're practically off the map.
The only way to get there is with us.
Stella Australis sets sail on her last voyage of the year.
This must be an unforgettable experience for all of them.
Into the furthest reaches of South America.
Really wild and raw.
Extraordinary place.
Stella Australis is one of a kind. The only ship on the planet designed specifically to navigate the remote fjords of Patagonia at the bottom of South America and brave the perils of landing at Cape Horn. She's compact but mighty. A nimble 89 meters long with a shallow 3.5 meter draft, enabling her to sail through tight channels and over shallow shoals. And Stella travels in style. Part luxury cruise liner, part expedition ship, she comes equipped with 5 decks, 3 luxurious lounges, gourmet dining, staterooms with king-size windows, and a fleet of Zodiacs to take guests just about anywhere.
Australis is taking people to places where no one else is going.
Por esta banda.
Mauricio Alvarez ensures passengers experience this part of the world firsthand. He grew up in Patagonia, and for him, there's no better ship to show off its wonders.
We are visiting fjords and channels that are still pristine and obviously one of the most unspoiled places on the planet.
It all starts here in Punta Arenas, Chile, a city of 120,000 nestled at the base of the Andes on the southern tip of South America. Stella is dockside, stocking up for her last regular cruise of the season. It's autumn, and the weather is already changing. This trip is coming in under the wire before the weather turns too brutal to sail. 3 decks up on the bridge, Captain Adolfo Navarro reviews the route ahead with First Officer Luis Gonzalez. It's his first year in command of Stella Australis.
For me, it's the best job in the world. Esta es la navegación más complicada que hay, navegar en canales. Y eso demanda control, demanda tiempo y demanda preocupación.
The region of Patagonia is shared by Argentina and Chile, covering much of the bottom third of South America. Over the next 8 days, Stella Australis will wind her way through the region's southernmost part, stopping first at Ainsworth Bay and Brooks Bay. From there, she'll sail the famous Beagle Channel to the Pia Fjord and on to Ushuaia, Argentina. Then it's south to Wulaia Bay and Cape Horn, hard by the roughest, most dangerous seas on the planet. On the return, she'll retrace her route, sailing the Beagle Channel and up into the Strait of Magellan before returning to Punta Arenas. The remote itinerary means the ship has to bring everything imaginable for the next week.
Vamos a visitar lugares totalmente deshabitados. ¿Cómo está? Mucho gusto. ¿Cómo anda?
Florian Munoz is in charge of provisioning the ship, and he has just 6 hours to do it.
¿Cómo está? ¿Viene toda la mercadería que te hemos solicitado para este viaje? ¿Sí?
If he forgets anything, they are out of luck.
No hay ninguna posibilidad, si nos falta algún producto, de poder pasar a comprarlo a alguna ciudad.
And there's no forklift to speed up the job. All 2 tons of food are delivered by hand to the storage rooms, 2 levels down in the hold.
No vienen sandías.
¿Ya?
Por el tema del transporte llegaron demasiado maduras, así que las reemplazamos por kiwis.
¿Por kiwi?
Sí.
After 20 years, Florian's learned the fundamental contradiction of every cruise ship.
Perfecto, me parece bien. Los cruceros son románticos, pero para nosotros es un trabajo de locos y entretenido. Me encanta este trabajo. Es muy entretenido.
Dame 10 minutos por lo menos. ¿Me puedes aguantar?
Meanwhile, the expedition leader, Mauricio, is juggling the itinerary. Many passengers book this end-of-season cruise, gambling they'd have the chance to see penguins. But a week ago, the last penguins headed north for the winter.
For some people, the main reason to be here were the penguins. We're not having any, so I have to deal with that frustration too.
By 2 p.m., the provisions have all moved from the dock to the ship.
Estas cajas vacías que están acá,
But now, Florian has just 4 hours left to make sure the entire ship's been cleaned from top to bottom.
¿las demás habitaciones están todas listas?
Las de ella no.
¿Esos chalecos salvavidas que están ahí? ¿Dónde está el piloto? Traten de meterse en las habitaciones, aspirar bien las habitaciones, ¿ya?
Florian is a stickler for detail,
Para limpiar acá.
taking matters into his own hands if necessary.
Tenemos que cambiarlo pronto esto. Esto está manchado, esto no puede estar así, lo vamos a cambiar enseguida.
And those stateroom windows need to be spotless. On this ship, the bigger the window, the more expensive the room. This one's a deluxe, $6,000 per guest for the 8-day trip. 4 p.m. Over at the terminal, passengers are checking their luggage through security. The goal is to bring the bags aboard and have them waiting in the rooms by the time the guests arrive. But the ship's reception area is a sea of suitcases. The staff can't keep up.
¿Qué falta acá?
Hola, Pato, adelante.
By 6 p.m.,
46. Ok, 46 recibo.
the
Gracias.
first busload of passengers is due.
That's Pato, our expedition guy who is at the terminal. He's sending 46 passengers in the first bus.
But Florian's stewards are behind schedule, still clearing the logjam of suitcases inside.
Suitcases and passengers at the same time, which isn't usual, but it happens every once in a while. 10 more minutes and we should be ready to go.
And they are, just in time.
Hola, señora, ¿cómo estás? Bienvenida. Hola, ¿cómo te va?
Stella can accommodate 210 guests. On this late season trip, she'll have 143.
Back there?
Yeah, of course we are.
All right, good to see you.
For the next 8 days, Mauricio and his team of guides
My name is Monica. Welcome. Hello, Monica.
will be on call 24/7, responsible for the safety and comfort of every passenger on board.
This is your room. Yes. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Wow, thank you.
Check this.
Oh my goodness, what an amazing view. Wow.
And very important, life jacket.
Hi, how are you? What we are trying to project to our passengers is have the experience of your lifetime. So this must be an unforgettable experience for all of them.
By 8 p.m., the bags are all sorted and everyone's aboard. Up on the bridge,
Estribor la caña. Estribor la caña.
the captain moves his 4,500-ton vessel out of port for her final cruise of the season.
Medio timón. Medio timón.
But sailing this far south is never routine.
Today we have a very good weather, so we'll be very calm this time. But we will see. We never know.
By the next day, they'll be deep into the icy wild,
Things like this to make it unstable
where a new challenge awaits.
because of the ice.
It's day 2 of Stella Australis' 8-day voyage through Patagonia. By 8:30 in the morning, she has traveled 163 kilometers from Punta Arenas, Chile, and is approaching Ainsworth Bay, the first stop of the trip.
Así que estamos aproximándonos en este momento al punto de fondeo.
The passengers soon board the Zodiacs and head for shore. Mauricio has scheduled a hike through a Patagonian subpolar forest, where he lets his guests in on a few survival tricks, like the tree bark that saved Francis Drake from scurvy.
There's ascorbic acid on the bark of this tree. Vitamin C.
And how to discover fresh water where there isn't any.
Okay, folks, pay attention to this. If I tell you that this is able to hold up 20 times its dry weight in water, would you believe me?
Oh my God.
There's a lot of it.
Later, while the guests enjoy a whiskey refresher on the beach,
Vamos, Juanito.
Mauricio slips away to check up on a side project. A group of elephant seals on a nearby island.
Look at the guy, seems like he's waving and saying hello to us.
He has become the current authority on this colony and reports his findings to 2 scientific institutes.
We're learning the way these guys behave. There's no information on them.
Mauricio and his guides document whatever they can about the region.
We have 2 adults, 2 males, 1 female, and a pup.
Yep.
Later that afternoon, Stella Australis arrives at her second stop of the day, Brooks Bay. Mauricio's passengers booked this cruise hoping they'd see penguins here, even though it's late in the season. But last week, the last penguins migrated for the winter.
Ven por aquí que te muestro qué vamos a hacer ahora.
So Mauricio's hoping they'll be equally impressed with a glacier.
In my opinion, I think this is very spectacular, so it will work.
But the bay's full of ice, making the trip to shore a challenge. He has to transport 143 passengers safely to shore, across freezing ice-filled water. Mauricio heads out in advance to have a look.
But things like this make it unstable. The real problem is that if we had too much ice, it would take longer.
And it's not easy on the engines either.
Okay, watch it. Propellers are also suffering a lot because of the ice.
A broken prop could put this Zodiac out of commission and pinch the timetable for today's excursion.
Está bien, Juan.
By the time he gets to shore, Mauricio decides it's doable.
Inicialmente lo haremos con 14 pasajeros por bote. El tránsito inicialmente será más expedito por estribor del fiord.
Autorizado el desembarco, mucha precaución con el hielo por el lado del estribor de la roca.
As the passengers head for shore,
We're gonna need some help here, Eduardo.
Mauricio's team prepares a landing ramp to help them over the rocks.
Vamos.
If there's a serious accident, the nearest hospital is a full day's sail away.
They shouldn't be having to be concerned on safety. We do that.
The Zodiacs plod through the ice-filled waters. The propellers take a beating, and so does Mauricio's schedule. By the time everyone makes it to shore, it's an hour later than he planned.
Vamos, let's get closer. Over 13,000 square miles of ice are in Chile. 11,000 of those are here in Patagonia.
Mauricio has tons of information to share, but the biggest surprise for his guests is how noisy a Patagonian glacier can be.
Look at that amount of ice.
This morning's forest walk was good, but this is breathtaking.
This is outstanding, awesome, incredible.
Ah mais mon Dieu, oulala, c'est bon ça.
That is spectacular, eh? Yeah.
So spectacular, nobody wants to leave.
Yeah, we gotta go now. That's it. Yeah, enough. I mean, it's not, I know. Never enough. I know, but well.
But back at the landing point, Mauricio has noticed that the tide is coming in. In no time, it will completely flood the rocks.
When we first came, there was no water at all next to this landing point, and we have a lot now. So within a few minutes, this is going to be covered, all of it.
He has to get everybody back in the Zodiacs sooner than he planned.
Atento, Ricardo, Ricky, Mauricio. I just wanted to make sure that you were all coming back to the landing point because the tide is increasing really fast.
But one group just can't pull themselves away from the glacier.
Hey, we have to go. Everybody, we have to go now. Everybody, please, s'il vous plaît. Tout de suite, s'il vous plaît. Vamos, vamos embora, vamos. Ready.
The last stragglers are finally loaded. They've made it by the skin of their teeth. By the time they're back on the ship, their landing point has completely disappeared. That night, Stella's passengers sleep. But up on the bridge, the ship's officers are about to face some of the trickiest navigation of the trip.
Buenos días.
Totally in the dark. By 4 a.m., they are poised to leave the shelter of the Coburn Channel. At this point in the voyage, there are always two choices. Open sea if the weather is good, or the more protected Occasion Channel if it's rough. But the channel is tight and twisty. The wind is starting to pick up. Heading out to open sea could make for rough sailing.
Para nosotros como marinos no es problema. Estamos acostumbrados. Pero para el pasajero podría ser un problema.
So Captain Navarro decides to take his chances with the narrow confines of the Occasion Channel. It's going to be a long night. It's 5 a.m. on day 3 of Stella Australis' voyage through the Patagonian fjords. To avoid heavy seas, the captain has decided to take his ship down the narrow and twisting Occasion Channel. It's tricky navigation. The first officer sends out a low-level warning,
Sécurité, sécurité.
letting other ships know that Stella Australis is in the channel.
Favor dar comprendido por este canal.
Este canal es muy complicado porque tiene muchas islas.
There are 7 islands here over a short 17-kilometer stretch. And a strong current the ship will need to fight. But the biggest issue is how the winds funnel as the channel narrows, accelerating and threatening to push Stella Australis off course. Stella's moderate size and shallow draft were designed for these conditions, but it's still risky.
Bueno, podemos chocar con una roca, una isla. Es una navegación muy precisa.
This area is so remote, it hasn't even been mapped by GPS yet. They have to plot their entire course manually using paper charts.
No hay carta electrónica oficial para esta área. 153.
For 40 minutes, they work their way around a series of small islands in the dark,
5 estrior.
trying to stay in the center of the channel. It takes total concentration.
Por lo tanto, hay que estar corrigiendo constantemente.
Until finally,
Bueno, terminamos el paso del canal Ocasión.
they've made it through, and they move on. By mid-morning, Stella Australis is cruising the Beagle Channel, named after the ship Charles Darwin sailed on here. After a stressful night, it's time to dial it down. Stella's 2 1,400 horsepower engines are capable of 13 knots, or 24 kilometers per hour. But to take in the scenery, she's cruising at a leisurely 10 knots. Up on the top deck, Renato Alvarez, the bosun, replaces a Zodiac propeller damaged by yesterday's expedition through the ice.
Esto sucede con los hielos y las rocas cuando tocan fondo la pata de la hélice. ¿Sí?
This is the 4th prop of the season for this motor alone.
¿Te pasan a dormir?
Sí.
One deck below, after only a few hours of sleep, the captain has been called to the bridge again, this time to guide the ship through the entrance to the Pia Fjord. Above the waterline, the channel stretches more than 2 kilometers from one side of the fjord to the other. It's beautiful, but deceptively deadly.
Se ve ancho, pero no lo es. Han chocado barcos anteriormente en esta entrada.
Down below, a huge deposit of gravel and rock, pushed there over centuries by the Pia Glacier, narrows the entrance to a mere 90 meters. This is the only place deep enough to sail through.
Rumbo 046.
The depth here will go from 113 meters to less than 14 in just 90 seconds. If he's picked the wrong spot, they could run aground.
019. Así al 019.
And as they head in, they have no way of knowing if the entrance has shifted since their last visit.
Suponiendo que hay algún cambio en la estructura del canal, podríamos ir directo a una roca. Es intenso siempre. Porque si no pasa, si se equivoca.
The bottom starts coming up fast as they reach the glacial deposit. 20 meters. 18 meters.
¿Pasamos o no pasamos?
Then, suddenly, it starts getting deeper again.
We already passed. We made it.
They're through. And up on the top deck, the bosun's crew is soon hauling out the Zodiacs again. Mauricio has given this next expedition top billing, another glacier, but he's promised the passengers way more action than yesterday.
Pia is one of the most active glaciers in the system, so we're all looking forward to see a lot of action, a lot of calving or the glacier breaking apart.
But the itinerary allows for only 90 minutes ashore here, and glaciers are unpredictable. Within a half hour, he's got everybody lined up in front of Pia's massive 45-meter-high columns of ice, expecting to see a chunk of the glacier break off and crash into the water.
So each one of those structures are showing enormous cracks in between. Just look for little pieces which are falling from that area. That is what's coming next.
Pia rumbles and cracks from shifting deep within.
Sounds like a shotgun, huh?
But so far today, she's all talk and no action.
Okay, something is coming, huh?
So they wait. And they wait. A full 40 minutes pass. It's so close, they can smell it.
I'm sure it's any time now. Yeah. We've been waiting here for so long, so.
Yeah, it's stubborn.
He's raised their expectations so high, now he's in trouble if there's no payoff.
This is one of those places in the world where weather is so variable and unpredictable, and I have to work with that. And so when I got up on top of that moraine, I saw...
But they can't stay much longer. He has to have them back on board in less than an hour. The captain has a schedule and must get to the next destination before dark.
Keep an eye on anything you see.
So, will she or won't she?
This is not finished yet.
Mauricio is running out of time. 3 days into their Patagonian adventure, Mauricio has brought Stella Australis' passengers to the Pia Glacier on a remote fjord just off the Beagle Channel.
Keep an eye on anything you see falling down, and then...
He has promised they'll see big chunks of ice breaking off, a process known as calving. But it's been an hour, and they're still waiting.
Not seeing any calving is, what can I tell you? I mean, it's simply spectacular. I mean, it's beautiful anyways.
But just when Mauricio seems ready to write off the promised big event, a chunk of ice the size of a small house plunges into the water.
Thank you.
Pia Glacier doesn't let him down. And there's more in store back on the ship.
¿Salchicha?
La salchicha tenemos suficiente salchicha.
Sí, tenemos 5 kilos de salchicha.
Perfecto.
Almacén.
Florian, the hotel manager, has been cooking up a surprise with head chef Rodrigo Ruiz. It's an international glacier food fest. As the ship sails past a series of massive glaciers, each named after a different European country,
Y cada uno de los glaciares que vamos a visitar va a ser con una degustación de comidas típicas de su país.
Florian floods the deck with international samplings. Beer and sausages for Germany. Fruits and fine cheeses with swanky champagne for France. Pizza for Italy.
Peter Balling, ¿también está lista?
And what better for Holland than succulent, steaming, hot bitterballen, Dutch meatballs.
Chili and cheese.
Lamb.
Ha sido todo un éxito, la verdad que nuestros pasajeros están felices, así que estamos muy contentos y la verdad que más contentos aún nos sentimos de ver la felicidad en ellos.
They travel all through the night. And by next morning, Stella Australis has arrived in Ushuaia, Argentina, the southernmost city on the planet, and their first sight of civilization in days. Some of the passengers leave the cruise here, others join it.
Esa hay que dejarla en la habitación 241, ¿eh?
Ok, allá vamos.
But the crew has been on the ship for 7 months,
¿Se la sacamos, por favor?
and they only get to contact their families twice a week when they are in port. Cell phone service here is too expensive for most of the crew. So Alejandro Avila, a waiter, and Nelson Vilches, a cook, make a beeline for the payphone store just down the dock.
Yo la última vez que vi a mi hija fue hace 4 meses, a mi hija y a mi familia.
Yo igualmente, yo en la misma situación. Hola, permiso.
But when they get there,
No, en serio.
the phone lines are down all over town. There will be no landline calls home for any of Stella's crew today.
Chao, gracias.
It's hard being so far away for so long.
Entonces, muy complicado.
It's a big disappointment. But that evening at dinner, Nelson and Alejandro are back on the job, making sure the passengers are having a good time. That night, as the ship heads out of Ushuaia and almost out of phone range,
Hi, this is Mauricio. I'm calling you from Stella.
Mauricio makes one last call.
Have you talked to any of the rangers of...
He's spent his day in port on the company's cell phone, trying to track down more wildlife.
Okay, I'll hold.
His passengers want to see more animals, but it's April, and Patagonia's penguins have all migrated for the winter.
I need to know the status of the colony at Marta Island. I need to know anything about the seals on that place.
He's hoping to treat his guests to a seal sighting instead.
If I don't have any penguins, I give them seals. And I'll try to make those seals as spectacular as penguins. That's my challenge.
By 4 the next afternoon, they are back in Chile, arriving at Wulaia Bay. When Darwin landed here on HMS Beagle, a ship 1/3 the size of Stella Australis, his captain probably didn't have Captain Navarro's problem.
The basic problem is that we don't have too much space to grab the anchor. Bueno, aquí nos encontramos.
The captain has to anchor between an island on one side and a point on the other. They're just under 500 meters apart. That sounds roomy, but any changes in the wind will cause the ship to rotate around the anchor within a radius of less than 200 meters. So even if they drop the anchor perfectly, it's still tight.
If the conditions change, we will turn to the south, and we will be very close to this point, less than 50 meters. It's not much. You need to be prepared to do this, of course.
The captain guides the ship through the bay, counting down until they enter the crosshairs of his coordinates.
Proa atento a fonder.
And then...
Fondo! Fondo!
12.5 tons of anchor and chain rumble to the bottom.
Puente expedición.
Within minutes, Mauricio is off in the Zodiac to give the landing point his okay.
Gracias. 9, 10, 11, 12. Uno
Back
más.
at the stern, the guests line up for their next expedition.
3, 4.
By now, they are experts getting in the Zodiacs and are off in no time. That's good news for Chief Engineer Mario Gonzalez. 2 decks below in the engine room, he seizes this opportunity to run through the engine's monthly maintenance.
Oye, ¿cómo estuvo el generador? ¿Lo viste?
He's been tending to Stella Australis since the first weld was put in her hull 4 years ago. And he loves her like one of his family.
Con este buque he estado desde la construcción. Esto es uno de mis hijos.
But the team has to work fast. They have just 90 minutes to get the job done before the passengers return. It's crucial maintenance. The ship is about to embark on the most demanding leg of the voyage, Cape Horn, one of the most violent and unpredictable stretches of water on the planet. But just as they get started, a problem. A faulty gasket that's really tough to get at. That's got Mario watching the clock.
Tenemos que hacerlo porque tenemos el tiempo muy ajustado, así que tenemos que hacerlo.
It won't be long before the passengers are back, and without the engines, they can't sail. 4 days out of Punta Arenas, Stella Australis sits anchored in Wulaia Bay, near the southernmost tip of Chile. In just a few hours, they'll be heading for the notorious Cape Horn. But a routine maintenance has turned into a real repair. While the engineers rush to finish before the passengers return, Florian has organized an end-of-season morale booster for the rest of the crew. A survival suit swimming race and barbecue.
Sí, estamos próximos a terminar la temporada. Han sido largos 7 meses.
For the crew, it's a welcome pick-me-up, especially for those like Nelson the cook, who missed the chance to call home yesterday in Ushuaia. Nelson comes in a happy third.
El clima no nos está acompañando mucho, pero la alegría y las ganas es lo importante.
Salud. Cheers.
Salud.
Back on board, Mario Gonzalez and the engine team put the last pieces of the engine back together and give it a final test. They finished the job with 15 minutes to spare. And by 6 o'clock, everybody is back on board. Tomorrow, it's Cape Horn.
Muy buenos días, señor capitán. Son las 6 de la mañana con 55 minutos.
It's almost dawn at the end of the world. Stella Australis has been moving south all night. Her destination? Cape Horn, known for its ferocious, unpredictable storms. The captain takes over the navigation. 4 decks below, Mauricio checks his tide charts one more time. And down the hall, 2 of Florian's bartenders slip into wetsuits. If there's a heavy surf on the beach, they'll hold the Zodiac steady while passengers unload. But the question on everybody's mind is, can they land? The weather here changes so fast, they won't decide until they get there. Mauricio arrives on the bridge. This is the main event. To stand where the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans meet, known to centuries of sailors as the world's end. And the pressure is on to make it happen.
Most of our passengers were coming from Europe, at least 60% of them are coming to see Cape Horn.
Yes, yeah, to be right at the bottom of the world would be good. This is it.
This is it.
great-grandfather came around the Horn in the 1860s on his way to California.
In the Sky Lounge, the excited guests are already dressed and waiting, hoping it's a go.
I think the captain told us it's going to work.
But up on the bridge, Mauricio isn't promising anything yet.
I need to get closer and check the conditions ashore. You never know. I have 144 people on board, and I want them all on the island. I don't want to happen anything to happen in the middle of the operation. It can change very quickly.
As soon as the anchor's down, Mauricio heads off with 4 guides and the 2 barmen turned frogmen to scope it out. The key to a Cape Horn visit, even on a good day, is to get them in, have a look, and get out fast before conditions change. He hopes to have everyone back on the ship in less than 2 hours.
Adelante!
On shore, it's low tide, and that's left the rocks way too slippery to walk on. In just 15 minutes, Mauricio's team puts together a temporary catwalk.
Está firme, mira. Yeah. Bridge. This is Mauricio calling to inform you that we're ready for passengers. We're ready for passengers. Thank you. Conditions are excellent. Such a beautiful day.
By 8:05, the first load of passengers hits the shore.
Buenos días. Bienvenidos. Bienvenidos.
And they begin the trek to the top, to the mythical spot that sailors once thought was the Earth's most southerly point of land.
If we keep going that way, our next destination will be the Antarctic, actually, literally. There's nothing else.
It is very windy.
It's amazing. It goes from being calm to like almost blowing you over.
Yeah, it's really wild and raw, but that's why we came.
Wild and raw? By Cape Horn standards, this is barely a breeze. The weather is usually so bad here, the monument to the sailors who drowned rounding the Horn had to be engineered to withstand winds in excess of 100 knots.
Extraordinary place. And the stories are just what those guys put up with to just go around this little bit of land. It's great. It feels really good to be here.
I couldn't ask for anything better than this. Some people probably were expecting to have a more real Cape Horn, you know, rough waters, a lot windier than this. But I feel good with this, because this means that I can bring everybody here.
Including Christine and Harry Critchley, who last of all make it to the top and fulfill a lifetime ambition despite Harry's recent stroke.
I can make it.
One small step. Voila! Well done, Harry.
And well done, Mauricio. His final Cape Horn expedition of the season goes off without a hitch. The weather's so good, Captain Navarro decides to give the passengers a big bonus.
In the normal conditions, we can't do this passage. It's impossible. But today, we had all the conditions to do it.
He'll take them right around the Horn, sailing Stella Australis into the treacherous Drake Passage.
Good morning, dear guests. At this moment, we are navigating the Drake Passage. We invite you to the lounges or to the open decks to enjoy the magnificent view.
Rounding the Horn is something totally unusual. I don't have any hard number now, but maybe 4 or 5 times this season.
Believe it or not, this is the Drake on a calm day. For the passengers, it's all great fun. But down below lies a graveyard for 800 ships and 10,000 sailors who battled with these waters and lost over the past 400 years. The winds here blow uninterrupted around the globe, then funnel through the gap between South America and the Antarctic Peninsula. Then there are currents from the Atlantic and Pacific, and those running off Antarctica. It all makes the Drake Passage the most notorious waters on the planet. Today, the winds are a mere 20 knots, but just 2 weeks ago, they topped 60. The good weather lets Captain Navarro motor through this 26-kilometer stretch of the Drake in 90 minutes. But centuries ago, it could take sailing ships 3 months to fight their way from the Atlantic to the Pacific around the Horn. Taking on the Drake is Captain Navarro's favorite part of the navigation.
It's like a fight between the vessel and the bad weather, the weather winds or the vessel winds.
Con un poco de cebolla caramelizada.
Down in the kitchen, head chef Rodrigo Ruiz has prepared a celebratory meal.
Tenemos en el fondo un filete de res, medallón, con salsa cazadora, salsa española, reducción de vino tinto, lechalot y cilantro.
It's not every day you get to tell your friends you conquered Cape Horn. But Mauricio still has one last promise to deliver on. That seal colony at Marta Island. 2 days later, the ship arrives in the Strait of Magellan. Rising early, Mauricio steals away in the darkness on an anxious search for seals. Stella Australis' trip to the end of the world is nearly over, and so is her season. Over the past 2 days, she has retraced her route back through the Beagle Channel, then headed north up the Strait of Magellan toward Marta Island. After everything they've seen on this trip, there's just one task left for Mauricio. His guests want to see more wildlife, and he's determined to deliver.
We're on our way now. We're okay, we're good.
So he heads off to find the best way to approach the Marta Island seal colony.
The access to the island is not that easy. It's too shallow around it.
Mauricio and guide Juan Gallardo Rojas have barely left the ship.
Can you smell them? I can smell the seals.
Mauricio picks up the scent.
Tenemos que pasar para allá, Juan. Aquí no hay nada ahí en la playa allá.
Finding their way to the tiny island in the pre-dawn dark isn't easy. Mauricio hasn't been here in almost a year.
¿Puedes ver el fondo?
Then they hit the shallows, right at low tide. They can't afford to lose a propeller.
Aquí pasaste, Juan, vamos. Okay, we pass the shallow now.
But they are barely clear of that. When they hit an impenetrable patch of seaweed that wraps around the prop.
Es que está lleno de algas, espérate, tira para allá.
They struggle to work their way out of it.
Oye, ábrete un poquito, Juan, porque tienes aquí en medio, mira, tira para allá.
And finally,
¿Cómo dices?
seals. Hundreds and hundreds of them, in the water and on the beach.
This is good, this is excellent. We have them all here. I have no idea how many, but there must be 1,000 of them. So this is excellent.
Mauricio has hit the jackpot. He calls Stella's passengers to the scene, and they are soon snapping photos like happy paparazzi. And it's not just seals. Even the sky is teeming with wildlife, gulls and cormorants. In a few hours, they'll say goodbye to Stella Australis at the end of the trip. And soon, so will the crew. After 7 months at sea and 31 round trips, they'll have some time off until next season.
7 months is a long time. So after 7 months, I need my rest. I need to go home, I need to see my family, I need to see my wife, my boy.
Pero también voy a echar de menos este es parte de mis hijos también, un hijo también que tengo, el Stella Australis.
As for Mauricio, He has shared his native Patagonia with almost 10,000 visitors this year, and the season couldn't end any better than this.
A couple of hours ago, I had no information on this island. We took our chance, we came here. This is great. I can't think of any other better end to this cruise.
5 months from now, Stella Australis will be back at it, bringing people up close to the magic of Patagonia in a way that only she can.